Big Ten Plus 4 is a member of Odd Pods Media and ASAP All Sports All Plays Network.
It is the most wonderful time of the year. Welcome into Big Ten Plus for March Madness edition. College Sports Midwest Perspective, blue collar, blue blood. Sam and I both love Big Ten basketball. We've been following it ever since it tipped off, and we are hoping that we see a little bit more success than we saw the last couple of years here in this big dance. That would help our narrative out a lot.
For sure. It would make our promo a lot more effective, wouldn't it?
Yeah, where we say, are you tired of hearing how the Big Ten can't get it done in the big dance? Where, again, the Big Ten had 9 teams in last year, 9 teams in the year prior to that. The year before that was the COVID year, but 9 teams in each of those, and 1 team has made it to the Sweet 16, I believe, in both. And this year they're in the NIT. That was Michigan. So somebody's got to step up to the plate. We're going to be talking about that today.
But one thing you have to look at, how crazy and absurd this basketball season is. The preseason number 1 chose to opt out of the NIT because they had such a horrible year. And is it because North Carolina was afraid they were going to get bounced?
Well, it could be. We saw last night in the Big Ten, Rutgers got bounced in their first game in overtime to Hofstra.
Well, and honestly, and the more I got to think about this, and we can get into this, would they have opted out if they were in the first 4?
No.
You don't think so?
No, I don't.
Okay, because I don't know. Crazier things have happened, I guess. But anyways.
And I thought I read a story last night that said they anonymously voted. All the players did. They handed out cards and had the players vote, and the majority of them just said no. And that's kind of how they came to that decision, which is interesting. But then again, like you have Michigan playing in the NIT last night, and Jet Howard sits out because, I mean, it's kind of like bowl games in football now.
They said it was an ankle injury, but I think, it's one of those that you can maybe fudge some stuff and make it more viable that they sit out. And it's because there's no interest to potentially hurt yourself leading into a draft. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's interesting. But the good news is we do have 8 teams from the Big Ten into the big dance this year.
Should be 9.
You think Rutgers should have been in?
I don't see how they shouldn't have.
With hindsight of last night's result, it's going to kill your argument.
You're absolutely right. But last year I also argued with Michigan getting to the Sweet 16, still argued. Oh, Purdue made it to the Sweet 16 last year too. But they got.
You're right.
But even with them getting to the Sweet 16, I still argued that they should have been in a first 4 game. Not an automatic bye. So I don't care about the end result, because you know what? Rutgers made it to a play-in game last year and got beat, but I still think they were deserving. I still think they were deserving this year, but who am I? I'm not on the committee. I also did not have North Carolina in my last 4 out, or first 4 out either. The committee did.
Yeah. So Sam's got a couple bones to pick here early on in this one, but we do have a couple first 4 games played. Last night we had a sensational game between Pitt and Mississippi State. I mean, I don't know if I can't recall the last game, and I know there has been. This isn't a first time ever, but I think there was like 7 minutes still to go in the second half, and there had already been 19 lead changes. It just was bucket, 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 bucket all the way through. It was incredible.
If one team went cold, they both did.
Yep.
It was just like always just boom, 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 back.
It was just holding a mirror up to yourself. Like it was a phenomenal game. Not play styles were different, but you get what I'm trying to say. The results and productivity. It was incredible. So we've had that game down. Today we're going to have Arizona State playing Nevada in that 11 seed matchup. And then Sam, of course, our resident Purdue fan, he's going to be tuned in, and so will I, matter of fact.
One.
Yeah, Texas Southern, and I should back up. That is actually the first one. That one's tipping at 640.
Okay.
Arizona State, Nevada will tip at 910. But Texas Southern and Fairleigh Dickinson will be tipping off at 640, and the winner will take on the Purdue Boilermakers.
Dalton, why is it you have a rooting or like an interest in that game as well?
Got a cousin through marriage that is actually the head coach at Fairleigh Dickinson, Tobin Anderson.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of great publicity for him because of the job that he's done at Fairleigh Dickinson. So it's really exciting that you've got a connection to be able to kind of see it a little bit from a different lens, but yet still just as excited, you know?
Oh, and his wife's family is all from Kentucky. And so they are rabid Kentucky fans. So throughout the years, whenever we would go to like the Champions Classic in New York City, I would always get a chance to hang out with them a little bit before games and talk with them because they had to be there for the Kentucky games.
Oh, for sure.
And so I'd be able to chat with them. But great guy. I'm really hoping that Fairleigh Dickinson can pull it off. So
the winner of that will go to the Fighting Zakides of West Lafayette, Indiana.
That's correct. That is absolutely correct. But that should be a lot of fun. And then again, we got 8 teams from the Big Ten into the Big Dance. And I think we're going to be talking about all of those matchups here throughout this show. We'll glance over at the women's side too, and what's taking place there involving Big Ten teams. But let's start with the men's group. And I don't know exactly the best way to maybe dissect or tackle some of this. Maybe we just kind of go team by team, take a look at their ceiling, take a look at what they got in front of them. So why don't we start off with the top seed from the Big Ten, that being Purdue. Now, again, you're waiting the winner between Texas Southern and Fairleigh Dickinson. But what do we believe the ceiling is for Purdue? What do we think is maybe the reality or the theory that we each have for them?
You tell me if I'm homerizing or if this is legit. I think their ceiling is a national championship.
Okay.
I think through the course of the season, they've proved that when they're playing at a their top level, they can beat anybody and they can dominate pretty much anybody that did it to Gonzaga. Look what they did to Duke. Yes, Duke at the time is very young, working through some injuries, but look at what they are now. We're going to look at body. Purdue beat them by, I think, 17. They beat Gonzaga by, I think, 18 because it was the first time a team unranked had went and beaten 2 top 10 teams by double digits like that. I think their ceiling is a national title. I really, really do. I don't consider that, even though I'm a Purdue guy, as me being unrealistic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I actually look through it, honestly, I think I'm going to have them go to the Final Four.
Okay.
The way things match up, there's going to be a tough potential second round with Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
The Sweet 16 could be against Duke or Tennessee. But I still think while Duke is a lot of people's darling dark horse to go to the Final Four and even win the national title,
not to win the title, but I like them in that region.
And I don't discount that, but honestly, the way Purdue has been doing it lately, yes, they've been getting out to leads, giving it up, but look at the fact that they still, after that, 4 out of 6 that they'd lost, they've still figured out ways to win games. And I think that they're starting to at least come around a little bit more. Fletcher Lawyer finally got some shots to actually fall. It doesn't matter if it rolled around and sat on the rim and then fell down. It doesn't matter. Dalton, when you were playing, if you were cold and you started getting just a couple of shots to fall, you would start getting your confidence, and all of a sudden more shots would fall. So I think Fletcher Lawyer might be a little bit getting into it. Mason Gillis started getting some shots to fall. So it's not that they're back to their high performance at the beginning of the year, but honestly, I think they're starting to get at least back to a higher level to where I think Final Four for me is at least viable as a legit. That's where at least I'm going to get them to.
At least.
I haven't considered my Final Four and those games yet, but
I've got a couple of things that I think help your argument, and I got a couple of things that go against your vision.
Sure.
I think the things that help is that East region can get real messy real fast. I think out of all the regions, that one has the most potential for upsets.
There are
I
people
think that
even
get
saying
wild.
that Oral Roberts could beat Duke like that because Oral Roberts won 30 games.
I've watched a fair amount of Oral Roberts this year. Don't ask why. It's just what I kept finding, and they were really good this year, so it was fun to watch them. But
I'm not saying that it will happen, but it could.
They've got a great 7-footer who is legit, and they've got a great backcourt as well. So I'm kind of interested in that matchup. It's the 5-12, of course, which is always the stereotype in March Madness and the brackets. So I'm curious about that, but I think that region can get real messy, and I think any region that gets messy gives your favorite team a chance because it's muddied up. I also see
an Elite Eight matchup of Purdue Michigan State.
I could. I really don't know what to do with that bottom half.
Yes, I know. That's why I asked that.
Michigan State, and of course, I have a large interest in Michigan State. They've shown that, believe it or not, they've shown when they're hitting shots, especially tough shots, which they've done throughout the year. They could be a tough out for anybody. And when Tyson Walker is hitting tough step backs in the face of defenders, it's going to be tough to deal with. I mean, they're the third or fourth best three-point shooting team in the country. And we know in these brackets in March Madness, guard play carries you. I think they could end up maybe making a run to that spot, like maybe the Elite Eight. They could also lose to USC in the first round. Consistency
too.
Consistency is a major problem with Michigan State, but they are absolutely capable of going on a run there. I think they have a path. It's just about if the switch is on or off for them. In a couple of ways, in terms of just shot making, but also mentality, effort, some of those other things. But if they flip the switch on, there's a path for them there. But for Purdue, I also love I'm into metrics quite a bit, and I think you're hard pressed to find anybody better than Ken Pom when it comes to some of these different things. And Purdue's adjusted offensive efficiency, 9th best in the country, adjusted defensive efficiency, 23rd in the country. And you want to be top 25 in both of those to really be a national title caliber team.
I do want to add that this is different, completely different than it was last year. They were not a good defensive team last year. They were great offensively. They were subpar defensively, and I think that helps too. If you've got an offense that can operate and maybe have points where they're struggling, but your defense is doing its job, you're going to be in most games.
And to work against the Purdue narrative,
let me have it.
I think really it's about freshman guards. Underexperienced underclassmen have struggled in this tournament by far. Like, that's just the nature and the history of it. And I think they've given us reason to be concerned with how the last couple of weeks have played out with the full court pressure. And even Matt Painter was asked about it after, some of the games in the Big Ten tournament. He's like, we really work on it, but we're really not just great at it at the end of the day. And it leaves them very suspect because many of the teams outside of the Big Ten, which of course is who they're going to be playing here, can be longer, can be more athletic, can play that kind of style, where the Big Ten is more uniform in play style. I think this is where those red flags might come back to bite them. And that's the concern I have for the Boilermakers. And that's why a lot of people have them out potentially in the second round, because not everybody wants to go chalk to the Sweet 16.
Right.
And the chances that happens are pretty low. And people's biggest target right now is Purdue for that very reason.
Can I ask why over somebody of the likes of like maybe a Houston that lost their leading scorer?
But he might be back.
Maybe, but we don't have that. I mean, and if he's only 70%, if Sasser's only 70%, is that going to be enough to drive the Houston bus to Houston? You know what I mean? Yep. I mean, and I'm not but hurt because people are picking on Purdue. You know what? It's not the first time. It's not going to be the last time that my team gets picked on about their shortcomings, and I'm okay with that. but like, how much more do they have to prove before they're like, okay, well, while we've got concerns, they're still legit because they've won the Big Ten regular season title. It doesn't matter who they had to beat. They won the Big Ten championship in the tournament. Like, what else do they have to make it? So like, if they beat Memphis, are they going to go, oh, okay, maybe they've got it figured out? Or is it going to be every round they're just going to keep doubting them? And I'm okay with it because that's a drive further than that.
What I would tell you is I think at this point, at least for me personally, it's about, are they going to be able to avoid that pressure? If they're not able to overcome it, what are the other angles they're going to be able to find to win? And the reason why it feels like Purdue has to continue to validate itself this year is because the Big Ten is incredibly average this year. So you do win the Big Ten by 3 games, but in a year where there's only one other team that was able to get better than a 7 seed, I believe. I think the next best seed after Indiana is a 7 Northwestern and a 7 Michigan State.
I believe you're right. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, in a year where teams are all lumped in one lane and it's fairly average. I mean, yeah, if Purdue wants to win a national championship, they're going to have to show again that they're a cut better than what they've been. And that just is what it is.
And I'm like, again, I'm not trying to go, why are they picking on? I'm just trying to figure out that, like, and you know what? Hey, let's keep doubting them because that puts a chip on their shoulder that if they want to prove everybody wrong, go for it. I'm going to be the happiest man in the world.
If Purdue last year won that Big Ten by 3 games, I would have picked them for the national championship without a doubt.
You talked about how the Big Ten is so average this year, and I'm not at all disagreeing with you.
And I don't know if that's the best word for it, but I hope you understand the sentiment.
I totally get what you're saying because everybody was lumped in together, so like that is average. Like there are a ton of teams that are good enough to make it, but like, are they good enough to advance? And this year, when we've doubted how many teams the Big Ten was going to get in, you even said on Friday how many you could only maybe logistically or logically see 1, maybe 2 make into the Sweet 16. Mm-hmm. I've also seen people prognosticate that they say 6 to 7 make it to the Sweet 16. I see both ways as a completely viable. Yeah, okay, I could see that. Especially with the brackets finally out.
So I was looking at the bracket, and it's funny because I did say that, and now I sit somewhere between. I could see every Big Ten team out by the second weekend. I could also see 4 teams from the Big Ten getting to the Sweet 16. and maybe that's how we'll transition to the second quarter because we're a little heavy here.
Yeah, that's fine. Let me get to the there we go. Second quarter.
So I think there are 4 teams that have a real path. We talked briefly about Michigan State, and I believe Purdue is one of those 4 teams. Purdue has a real path to get to a Sweet 16. Michigan State, I think, has a path to get to a Sweet 16. And again, if the switch is on, like Michigan State has shown this year, the only problem is, especially when you're filling out a bracket, I mean, good luck. You really just don't know exactly what to bank on. And if Walker's able to hit some tough shots, they're able to play pretty hard and show a little better effort than what they did against Ohio State in that Big Ten tourney. I mean, Michigan State could go on a run to the Sweet 16.
Let's be fair on that too, though, Dalton. Ohio State started playing ball.
No, they did. And it's not so much that they lost to Ohio State in the tourney. It felt like, especially for a Tom Izzo team and a Michigan State team, and this is why there was such a negative reaction from the head coach afterwards, that was a lackluster effort. It just felt that way.
And the way it started, that was because Michigan State shot out of the gates.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden just kind of went, oh, we got this.
Yep. So
never recovering.
Interested to kind of see. And so, like, especially in Michigan State's first matchup with USC really defends around the rim pretty well, defends inside the arc. Outside the arc, not so much. So if Michigan State goes bombs away, which again, they're 3rd or 4th best in the country at 3-point shooting, Michigan State can move on and play Marquette, which sets up an interesting Joey Hauser matchup between Michigan State and his former school, Marquette. And this is a different Marquette squad under Shaka Smart.
It's also a different Marquette squad that Purdue beat in the beginning of the year.
Yes.
They've gotten better too.
Yes, absolutely. It's a great point that it's a much different team than what was played early on. So I think Michigan State has a path to a Sweet 16. I just don't know how you bank on anything really in this tournament, but really on that.
I would say watch out for Vermont. I don't know why, but they always seem to be at least very, very competitive in their first round games. Always.
Well, it's interesting if we're looking at 15 seeds that come off dangerous, and I'll be honest with you. I've filled out my bracket a couple times now, and I keep retooling it. I don't know why I paid too much attention and effort into this thing, but
go by colors, dude.
Yeah, if there were any 15s, Colgate interests me. And the reason why I can't pick them is because I think Texas has played so well down the stretch. I don't want to pick against Texas, but Colgate, I believe, is the number 1 3-point shooting team in the country. Let me pull this back up.
I believe you're right. Though while you're doing that, I'll tell you about the one that I always look.
41% from deep. Sorry to cut you off. Colgate, number 1 in the country. So, like, if a team gets hot like that, I mean, it's very possible. Yeah.
Well, look at St. Peter's last year against Kentucky. But the one I always, whenever I see them in the tournament, I always look at, man, they could win, and it's Princeton. I always consider Princeton as a team that could knock off whoever they're playing, no matter where they're at on the seed line, because they play a different breed of basketball always. And if they can get you to play their style of game, you're in their neighborhood, they have a shot to beat you. And so I don't think Arizona's going to lose to them, but I always kind of keep my eye on that matchup.
It's interesting too, because as we talk about some of those other Big Ten teams that I think have a shot to get to a Sweet 16, let's move to the Midwest where Indiana sits. And I thought heading into this, Indiana was one of 2 really that maybe can make a Sweet 16 before we saw the bracket. Indiana plays Kent State, and honestly,
watch out for the flash.
It's going to be interesting because again, Indiana has had some suspect guard play at times outside of Jalen Hood-Schifino. Let me be very clear there that
even he struggled against Penn State.
He was inconsistent throughout the year. Absolutely. But outside of Trace Jackson Davis and Jalen Hood-Schifino, I get a little concerned about what's going to happen to Indiana offensively. Now, I love that versatility they bring. Sure. I think they're able to do a lot of different things with the size and the different rotations they're able to throw at you. But I'm curious who steps up there. And you look at Kent State, and Kent State coming out of the MAC, I wanted to pull up their KenPom numbers. They are 38th best in adjusted defensive efficiency. And so I'm curious if they kind of turn us into a rock fight, maybe if the Flashes can't pull one out.
Yeah. And again, not me being a Purdue guy, I have considered this as an upset, early round upset. And it's because let's think about it. What I've been talking about the past 3 weeks is IU struggles outside Assembly Hall.
Yeah.
And while they are clearly the better team, they have also shown that they are able to play to the level of who they're playing against and get beat by them when they're not at home. And even when they're at home. But when they're not at home, they're especially suspect to that upset. And that's why I keep thinking maybe Kent State's got this, got enough to pull off this upset. And I haven't finalized my brackets, and like I said, I haven't done my Final Fours. But I've got IU going to the Elite Eight. I've got them beating Houston, but I'm still considering pulling them,
knocking them out in the first game.
But is it me just being silly and totally erasing what I think they could do? Because I think that's their ceiling. We talked about what's Purdue's ceiling. I think IU Elite Eight's kind of where I've got them kind of topping out at. And logistically, where do I have them? I honestly, I could have them going out in the first round. I just haven't finalized my picks yet.
It's a really, really hard year for making brackets. I don't know why I still do this.
This is the year that if you got the perfect bracket. What was it? Warren Buffett a few years back said if you got a perfect bracket, you get $1 billion. You should get $100 trillion if you get it right.
Up the stakes, because the probabilities of this are ridiculous.
Lord.
I was taking a look too, and so those are 3 that I think have a chance to make a Sweet 16. The other one from the Big Ten, and this one might surprise you a little bit, it's Penn State.
I am right there behind you.
10 seed there in the Midwest. They're going to start with Texas A&M. Texas A&M, of course, has my heart a little bit because former Michigan State player Julius Marble plays there.
Yes.
But that being said,
Killer
that
stash,
means
dude.
I know. I love Julius Marble. I really do. And he's a great post player, but that does mean they're undersized there. And where does Penn State hurt? Their front court. Their strong backcourt. And as we've said time and time again, guards can carry you in this tournament. Penn State has upperclassmen and a ton of talent around that perimeter. I think Penn State's able to maybe get hot enough where they could not just maybe win against Texas A&M, but they could maybe upset Texas just given how guard-oriented it is. Now, given, again, we're just really taking shots in the dark here, and we're just exploring possibilities. But I think if you have an upperclassman backcourt that shoots well from the outside, that's just a good rule of thumb to start with when looking at teams that could maybe get hot.
Well, and I told you last week, and you kind of, really? But it was before the tournament had played, or the Big Ten tournament had played out, and Penn State made it to the finals. I said that I thought that they've got enough there, and Jalen Pickett is enough of a horse that he can put the team on his back and score 40 points and win a game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he could do that multiple times if needed. Now, I'm not saying that they could make a run to the Final Four with him doing that Kemba Walker style, but I think that it's definitely something that they could do. And honestly, if of all the upsets, barring a 16-1, 15-2, even a 14-3, that win of Penn State over Texas would be my big upset of the first weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Because of how well Texas is playing. But the fact that Penn State's a double-digit seed would make it, to me, just that biggest one, but I wouldn't be shocked by it either.
Oh, I've picked so many upsets. That's why my bracket is stupid. It's so stupid.
I said stupid it's going to do well. You know that, right?
I finished scribbling it out, and I looked at it, and I said, thanks, I hate it. Like, I just, it's not going to work well, but yeah, no, and it's interesting, but I think Penn State really has a good shot at maybe making a run, because especially, too, we talked about the lack of front court play for the Nittany Lions as they play, and I quote Brad Underwood, booty ball, with Jalen Pickett backing down defenders. I think that just creates so many options. I really like Penn State to maybe make a Sweet 16 run. But so those are the 4 that I looked at, and I looked at the brackets, and I said, I can see a trip to the Sweet 16, Purdue, Michigan State, Indiana, Penn State. Anybody I'm missing to you?
No, because you look at what second rounds would be coming if they were to win. So if Illinois wins, they're going to play Kansas. I don't see them beating Kansas.
Same.
If you look at where I lost my Northwestern, if they beat Boise State, they're going against UCLA.
Yep.
Don't see that happening.
Iowa would play Houston in the second round.
Yes, Iowa. If they win, they play that ain't happening. Like, it's just.
And if Maryland wins, they would play Alabama.
So like 3 of the 8 teams that are in the Big Ten will go play 1 seeds if they win.
Yep.
Unless there's a 16-1 upset, and I don't see any 16 seed at this time that would win. Now, nobody saw Maryland, Baltimore County beating Virginia either.
Yeah.
So Texas A&M, Corpus Christi, you're on the clock. But my point on that.
Let's go Knights, Fairleigh Dickinson. Come on now.
No. Let's think about that one. No, bad Dalton.
Almost walked you into it.
You notice I know my schedule. Then is what I.
Yeah, you're on it.
But if Fairleigh Dickinson wins, I get to see them play because I'm going to be in Columbus this weekend to cover the first 2 rounds. So if Fairleigh Dickinson wins, I'll be sure to put bugging their coach's ear to, hey, let's ease up. All right, let's be happy with the one win in the dance. All right.
We're trying to make it to the Final Four for the first time since 1980.
I was
Sam.
6 months old when they went to the Final Four last, sir. Please do me a favor.
That's wild to think about too, and that's why I was recently going through the Purdue NCAA tournament just stuff, because it's the fourth time they've ever been a 1 seed is this year here. The last time was 1996, and to think about,
they got beat in the second round by Georgia.
To think about those teams, and there hasn't been a Final Four in 43 years. It really is fascinating, and Purdue fans are saying we're due.
Yeah, and you know, their best chance was the year before that year that you were talking about, when Glenn Robinson was a junior, got beat in the Elite Eight by Grant Hill and Duke. They had a 13-point lead in the first half and ended up getting beat. It was heartbreaking because Robinson struggled in his last college game, and if he would have just had an average game, they would have won by 15 points. Like that's how frustrating it was. But whatever on that one. But I want to draw the likenesses of another time they were a 1 seed, and that was in 1988. They were the 1 seed in the East, I believe, which is the region they're number 1 seed in. Their second round game, or their first round game, was against Fairleigh Dickinson.
Okay.
Their second round game was against Memphis. And now this is where it differs a little bit, but K-State was the team that knocked them out in the Sweet 16, but K-State is in their bracket as well.
So there's a path.
There's a legit path to where this is okay. Let's right the wrong from 1988 and that team that should have made it to the Final Four. Let's correct it, and let's do it this year. So
that's wild. And I keep thinking too of Purdue teams. I can't help but think about in my lifetime 4 years ago, that 2019 trip with Carson Edwards just going bonkers.
I saw a tweet, and I don't remember who it was off the top of my head, but they said the most heartbreaking loss for your team in March Madness, and I was heartbroken when Duke beat Purdue in the Elite Eight. That game against Virginia is way more heartbreaking because half-court pass with 2.5 seconds left, and the clock doesn't run out of time.
It was just about the most incredible play I've ever seen in basketball. It was ridiculous.
It was so improbable. The announcer thought the guy hit a 3 to win the game. Like that. Like seriously, he said for the win, and the guy's at the elbow of the lane, and he says for the win. Oh, they win it, and then he had to quickly backtrack because he realized he wasn't beyond the 3-point arc, which logically, that's where he should have been if with that type of pass to make it to where he was. He should have been further away from the hoop, but no, he was 15 feet away.
It was one of the best passes that's ever happened.
It is so still one of those heartbreaking that Purdue should have been in the Final Four that year. And I'm not bitter. It's just heartbreaking. You know, there's a difference between bitterness and heartbreak.
Well, it's the beauty of March Madness. I mean, it elates some and it devastates others, and it's going to be a lot of fun to see this year's edition.
Can I mention one matchup that is provocative to me, and that's it's in the East, Kentucky and Providence.
Yep.
Providence has been such a strong team at times. Now, don't get me wrong, they're an 11 seed. Well, let's say it this way. They're not a higher seed because they've struggled at times, you know, and so they're probably a lower seed, but I could see that being an upset to where Providence advances and plays in the second round because the way Kentucky struggled at times this year as well.
Much like we talked about Michigan State's inconsistency, Kentucky's in the same boat. I mean, you just don't know sometimes which Kentucky team's going to show up.
Yeah.
It's going to be really interesting. But let's go ahead, hit halftime. We'll come back and break down the rest of the Big Ten.
For sure. You are listening to Big Ten Plus 4, hosted on Anchor and StreamYard.
Hey, this is Russ.
This is Kyle.
This is Michelle.
From the Infectious Groove Podcast. Join us every Monday for the most fun you can have with a music podcast. The Infectious Groove Podcast uses a positive and fun approach as we take time every week to share our jammy jams, then dig into a thought-provoking topic discussing all decades and genres of music. You can find the Infectious Groove Podcast on all major podcast platforms, or you can head to infectiousgroovepodcast.com to find us there and subscribe. We might have a controversial opinion here or there, but we always have fun with it.
Oh, I'm sure I'll say something dumb.
Subscribe to the Infectious Groove Podcast, part of the Odd Pods Media Network.
Hi, I'm Tina Jaramillo.
And I'm Hillary Doherty.
And we host the Muck Podcast, where we discuss the dark and sometimes weird true stories in American politics.
Hey, Tina, did you know that Elvis crashed the Nixon White House for the sole purpose of getting a DEA badge? And it worked?
What? Or how a gun control advocate senator out of California engaged in gun trafficking with notorious gang leader Shrimp Boy?
Shrimp Boy, I remember him. Okay, so, we cover all of that and more from maladies, madness, mischief, and murder in U.S. politics.
And we also host a bi-weekly interview segment called Lil Muck.
We interview politicians, journalists, activists, and others who share their experiences in politics.
Find the Muck Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and check us out on social media at the Muck Podcast.
I don't know why it goes short.
That's one of my favorite things each week, to see just how that third quarter whistle.
I wasn't even thinking about it because it had been doing so well, the whistle, that I was like, I'm not going to tempt fate and go, please work right. And I just clicked it and it beep.
You had a streak going.
Yep.
Bounced out.
And you've got a streak going, 2 straight shows, and you're going to break that on Friday.
Yes, I am.
but I will get to see you on Friday in person.
That's right.
I'm excited about that.
I'll be wearing a different cap. I've worked the last 6 NCAA tournaments, but be a fan. I'm kind of excited for that.
We're flip flopping roles there because I'm not going to be a fan. I'll be working, so it's
and you'll have
me
a
what
lot
I'm
of
doing
fun
wrong.
With that. Yeah, you'll have a lot of fun with that. It is fun to cover. Looking at some of the other Big Ten teams, because we covered 4, and if you're joining us late, we've covered Purdue, we've covered Michigan State, we've covered Indiana, and we've covered Penn State. Moving now to Iowa and Auburn. This one in the Midwest region. This is the 8-9 game. And again, if you win, you're more than likely getting top seed in the region, Houston. But looking at Iowa, now look, I'm still a little bit scarred from last year, watching a hot Iowa team win the tourney,
and
the Big Ten
in the first round
and lose in the first round. It was first round.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah.
And I just find teams that struggle defensively, at least using the metrics, I find them hard to bank on. You look at Iowa this year, they're third best in adjusted offensive efficiency, according to the Ken Palm rankings. Defensive efficiency adjusted, they are 166th. And I just don't love that. When I take a look over at Auburn, meanwhile, is 49th in adjusted offensive efficiency, 28th in adjusted defensive efficiency. And the game's in Birmingham, Alabama.
To be honest, I did not pick Iowa. I
get it.
I picked Auburn to win this, and it's because it's probably recency, because Iowa, lost at home to Nebraska to finish the season. They got beat in the Big Ten tournament, like lacklusterly, and it didn't. They haven't shown that prolific offense, and maybe and here's the thing. We could be absolutely wrong. We've been wrong before, I think, once or twice, that, performance, all of a sudden it kicks in and their offense scores 150.
Absolutely.
Points, and they blow Auburn out by 25. But I honestly, with the way they've been playing recently, I don't know that they've got enough to beat Auburn, because Auburn's been playing pretty well lately too.
Yeah. No, I completely understand that. And like I said, that defensive efficiency will scare me away from picking teams, and Iowa's very much is that case. Looking over in the South region, Maryland's the 8 seed. They're going against 9 seed West Virginia, also in Birmingham, Alabama, because if one of those teams win, more than likely they're going to be seeing top seed Alabama in the second round.
It's the Islanders. The Islanders will be playing whoever.
Hey, let me see that bracket. I want to see that written down for you, Sam.
No, I'm not calling that. No, Maryland is my other Jekyll and Hyde team that I've talked about along with IU that when they're not at home, they really, really struggle.
Yep.
They don't perform well when they're not at home. And I still think they probably have enough athleticism and stuff in the cupboard to maybe win that first round game. I think I did pick them. I don't have my bracket in front of me, but I don't see them having enough to beat Alabama, even close, especially in Alabama.
Well, and even that West Virginia game. So for Maryland, taking a look at their adjusted efficiencies, offense 34th, defense 33rd, according to Ken Palm. West Virginia 15th in offense, 53rd in defense. So it kind of lines up to be a good matchup, but I'm totally with you. I've seen enough Maryland this year where if they're not in College Park, I don't love what I see. If this tournament was in the Xfinity Center, they might just win the whole thing. But when
you're
not
wrong either. That's the kicker. You're not wrong.
So I'm not high on Maryland either. If we move over to the West region, Illinois, the 9 seed, will play Arkansas, the 8 seed, and you keep using the phrase Jekyll and Hyde. And in terms of inconsistency, you never know which Illinois team you're going to get.
Well,
ever.
And we talked about this on Friday after Illinois got beat on Thursday. The post game was they're still looking to gel. Yep. And here was the argument. They were arguing that Penn State absolutely has gelled. They know each other. They know their ins and outs. Illinois still doesn't. Even their coach has said he's hoping they gel.
Yep.
They just haven't. And I don't know that I've seen enough for them to get. I have Arkansas winning this game because they've just been so inconsistent in their performance. I mean, look, their final game of the regular season, they were down by 24 against Purdue. They stormed back. They still lost, but you're like, okay, maybe they're starting to figure some things out. And then they go into the tournament and play like they did. And it didn't. Penn State never really, I mean, it was a close game for the most part, but you never felt that Illinois was going to make a run. You never felt that they were going to grab hold of it and take. It was almost like they're sitting there going, "Oh, we hope we win. We hope we win." Instead of, "Damn it, we're going to win." They didn't have that killer instinct to where all of them were firing on the same cylinder, and I don't have the confidence that they're going to put together 40 minutes to win.
Completely agreed. And that goes full circle back to Brad Underwood's presser early in the year where he just made a fart sound into the microphone when asked about leadership on the team. But I mean, it's
trying to figure it out. That's the kicker.
It's still trying to be figured out. And that heading into March Madness does not necessarily make me the most confident in that squad. The other Big Ten team we still have to talk about, Northwestern, a 7 seed there in the West region. They're going to be taking on Boise State, the 10 seed, and the winner you imagine might get to see UCLA in that second round if they're able to beat UNC Asheville. But for Northwestern, this is an interesting one because you look at the Ken Palm rankings for both Northwestern and Boise State. Boise State's defensive efficiency, 14th. Northwestern's 13th. I mean, this could be a defensive
It's going to be
fight.
32-34 final. Like that. Honestly, it could be in the low 50s as an overall score for both teams. Like they're both really, really good defensively. And for what we've turned March Madness into, it's going to be a boring game. For those people that love basketball are going to go, "Oh my goodness, this was such a fantastic game." Hopefully there may be one team that all of a sudden blows up and they win by 20, but the way it's setting up, it's going to be a close game and it's going to be a great one.
Which I saw Matt Norlander tweet this out last night, and this one kind of caught me by surprise. We didn't have a buzzer beater in last year's March Madness. We didn't have one buzzer beater in last year's March Madness. The last buzzer beater we've had in the tourney was Jalen Suggs from half court to beat UCLA in the Final Four. That's the last buzzer beater we've had in March Madness.
Wow. So we're going to be up for one this year, or 2,
hopefully
or 5.
30. Yeah.
Honestly, as long as it's not Purdue getting beat, I'm all for it. I don't care if my national champion, which has happened, gets knocked out in the first round, other than it being if I choose Purdue. I've had my national champion knocked out in the first round on a buzzer beater, and it was heartbreaking, but I'm like, oh, I love March.
Oh, that's what. Yeah, and we talk brackets and whatnot, and the reality or the acceptance that I do is after a couple games, whenever I first lose one, I just say, okay, I've lost, I'm done, and I just like put it away so I can just enjoy March, because like this is such a great experience to not enjoy because you're tied up in something as trivial and stupid as trying to have a wonderful bracket that's so unpredictable.
Dalton,
anyway,
this is why I don't enter contests with a bracket. I just fill it out.
Yep.
And if it's wrong, so be it. But I don't enter it because then I don't have to worry about whether or not, Toledo beats, Marquette or whatever, whatever, you get what I'm saying. It's just, and I don't know why I said Toledo, but
I was like, wow, somebody was watching Toledo, Michigan, NIT last night.
Honestly, it's always the default city that I fall to. It's like, oh yeah, well, that doesn't mean anything to anybody in Toledo. I don't know why. But it's one of those that I don't want to have to worry about whether an upset happens or blah, blah, blah. I want to enjoy the moment, and I don't enter contests because of it.
Yep. No, I'm completely with you there. Let's go ahead, step aside. We'll come back with the fourth quarter, and we'll take a look over at the women's side.
Yes, let's do that.
All right, the big dance is here for the women as well, and the top seed from the Big Ten is Indiana here in this one.
Does this
Indiana,
surprise you
that they got a 1?
No, compared to, Iowa ends up winning beating IU in the last game, then running through the tournament the way they did and just dominated it. Now, they didn't play IU in the finals, but still they dominated it. Is it a little bit of a surprise that maybe they didn't jump them, or is it enough to where they hadn't performed well enough in the year like IU had to be able to supersede them from the one line?
Yeah, I almost would have looked around at maybe one of the other ones like Virginia Tech and thought Iowa might have had a chance to maybe climb above that. But IU being at a 1 does not surprise me at all.
No, I guess that was my question. Is it a surprise that Iowa didn't get a 1? I guess is more of what my question is.
Yeah, and I can see that for sure. But as we said, Indiana gets, and I'm pulling up all the Big Ten teams here in front of me. Indiana gets the 1. There are 7 Big Ten teams that made it into this tournament. Illinois is going to the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2003, which is amazing. And why Shauna Green has done such an amazing job.
You were just a young pup when that happened last.
8. I was in 2nd grade the last time Illinois women's basketball was in the big dance. Indiana, as we talked about, they're the 1 seed. They won the Big Ten regular season championship for the first time in 40 years. They end up in the they're going to start 40 years. Last
3.
There you go. Yeah. 1983 was the last time IU won the regular season. So they're obviously as the top seed. They're going to host at first, and if they win, they'll move on to Greenville. And see if they can't make their way to Dallas as the 1 seed. Iowa, we talked about a little bit, and you mentioned they win the Big Ten tourney. They're the 2 seed. They get to host. They're in Iowa City. They're in Stanford's region. And I think if those two end up meeting in the Elite 8, like I kind of imagine that will happen, I think we could be in for one wonderful game between Stanford and Iowa.
And we're still at the point in the women's game that the parity isn't as widespread as the men's, and that's not downgrading anything, but you can go a little bit more chalk to get and expect chalk to get to the Elite 8s.
Yes, no, it's absolutely fair. I mean, it just plays out more.
It's gotten better from when I was younger.
Yes,
because when I was younger, it was Louisiana Tech, Tennessee, and then a bunch of others. That could get there but didn't. North Carolina was in there and stuff, but like now it's working out, and then UConn obviously worked its way, but now it's worked out to where you've seen Baylor be dominant, you've seen now South Carolina be dominant, you've seen UConn be dominant. Yeah, I mean it varies a lot more now.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And Maryland ends up being a 2 seed in one of the teams you just mentioned, South Carolina's region. And that's where it gets interesting. I think Maryland could absolutely go to the Elite Eight, but I think when they run into that buzzsaw that is South Carolina at 32-0 and Aaliyah Boston, I just don't know. I think South Carolina is a different team right now.
I agree, but I think honestly, looking through all these teams of all the 2 seeds, if there was a 2 seed that could beat South Carolina, I'd say it was Maryland.
Fair enough.
Of the 2 seeds, I don't think there's enough athleticism on Iowa. Maybe UConn, but UConn, I think they did play, didn't they? South Carolina,
I believe so. Yeah, earlier this year
South
they did.
Carolina
They did.
handled them. I'm not saying that Maryland's going to beat them, but I think if of the 2 seeds, and I don't know enough about Utah, I guess, but I would say of the 2 seeds, if there was one that could upset South Carolina, I would say it's Maryland because of their athleticism and their length.
So long, so athletic. I mean, Diamond Miller runs the show there in College Park, and averages 20 a game.
Monica Zananu only took 4 shots in College Park.
Yep.
And that's because of the athleticism and the length down low for Maryland that they were required to take threes. And I know some about South Carolina, but like if they struggle from outside and because they can't get down low against Maryland's got a shot if they can get there. I again, not saying it's gonna happen, but I think it could. It's not out of the realm of possibility. It's just not likely.
Yeah. And we'll take a look over at the 3 seed Ohio State, who will be getting to host there in Columbus as well.
What a time to be in Columbus this weekend.
I know.
Jeez Louise.
Well, and between Dayton just down the road having first 4 games throughout the yesterday, today, and then you have Columbus men's and women's basketball. It's sensational.
Well, and Purdue plays St. John's in Columbus.
Yep.
Tomorrow. And so there's a lot going on in Columbus for the whole tournament weekend. It's pretty exciting.
It's a place to be if you're a basketball fan. Yeah, it is the place to be if you're a basketball fan. But Ohio State again finally got JC Sheldon back in the mix during that Big Ten tournament.
Yes.
It'll be interesting to see if that creates a little momentum, a little traction for the Buckeyes, and how far they can ride that out. Michigan is a 6 seed. I'm trying to find them on the bracket in front of me. They play UNLV to start. They'll be down in Baton Rouge for those games, LSU hosting. If Michigan wins against UNLV and LSU beats Hawaii, they would match up against Angel Reese and the Tigers, who, of course, had a great year. They were undefeated for the most part, finally dropped a couple late. They're 28-2, but it'll be interesting to see if the Wolverines can kind of get it going a little bit. And by the way, again, Michigan, not necessarily a flashy team. They don't do much that necessarily pops off the page that wows you, but solid fundamentals. It'll be interesting to see how that plays. And then finally, you mentioned Purdue playing St. John's, and Purdue makes it back under Katie Gerald's. And you can already see, this is just the second year for Katie Gerald's, and her first year was accelerated. She wasn't supposed to necessarily take the reins right away. But ended up having to be kind of thrust into the situation 40 days before the season started. And now here in year 2 has the Boilermakers dancing once more. I think you see big things on the horizon for Katie Gerald's and the Boilermakers.
I sure hope so. Purdue went, they've won a national title in my lifetime. Granted it was 20 plus years ago.
I believe they're the only Big Ten team to win a national title.
They're the only Big Ten women's team to win a national
Maryland
title.
Was in the ACC back when they won theirs.
So they were there. I don't consider that, even though technically I think they probably would say that counts or whatever.
I don't think they would, but I just wanted to clarify for anybody who gets.
But you've seen them at there, and then they've just progressively, and they've had good seasons, but they just weren't producing. And Katie Gerald's, who was a phenomenal player, but for her to turn things around and get them back in year two, that's a great job. And really quick, I'm looking at the the bracket for Seattle 3. I guess is the way they're numbering it.
Yep.
I think Ohio State could go to the Final Four.
You got them getting by UConn.
Likely, maybe not, but UConn isn't the UConn of old. They're not the, oh my goodness, UConn. They've gotten you beat. What is that line from Catch Me If You Can? You know why the Yankees win? It's because everybody's staring at their uniform. And they're not that UConn anymore. They're not bad. Don't get me wrong.
The one that won 100 and some games in a row.
Correct. But they're beatable. And Ohio State hasn't had JC Sheldon for most of the season, and they're working her back in. I think that Big Ten tournament, even though they got housed in the finals, did them a world of good to get them back into shape of having her in the lineup. Cody McMahon, if you've got a 1-2 punch like that, my goodness, if they're on, and they've got a good supporting cast as well. So, and they didn't accidentally get to number 2. I mean, they just didn't get 19-0 by accident.
Yeah.
So they've got the potential to be there. I think, I see a path that they could get to the Final Four. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well, this should be a lot of fun to see how it plays out. Hopefully, all of you listening have been very smart and cleared out the weekend so you're not doing a thing, because especially if you're kind of like us where you're going to be trying to inhale both the men's and women's basketball sides, it's going to be so much. I think Friday between the men's and the women's, you'll have 32 games to take in. So go ahead, clear out the schedule, just sit down and just take it in.
And also, don't go by what we're saying to make your picks.
Oh gosh, no. We use logic, and March Madness is anything.
Yes,
but.
we should know by now that there is nothing logical about what happens in March. It just is not what happens.
It's so funny when I was first trying to fill out the bracket, and I was looking, and I had all these metrics in front of me, and I stepped back and I said, I know too much now. Like this can't play out right, because now I've got too much in my head.
Dalton, you were part of my family and friends pool last year. You finished last. My 7-year-old won.
That's just about right.
And that's not me making fun of you. It's just the way it works.
No,
that's
100%.
the way it happens.
That's how this will happen again this year. So, yay. That time of the year. Throw out the brackets. Just have fun with it. March Madness is here. We're going to celebrate, baby. All right, Sam, as we close things down, let everybody know where they can find us.
You know, I just realized that I never switched us over on the visual to where you were on the left and I was on the right. Like
I caught on to that, but I was like, you know what? It's March Madness. We're feeling frisky.
Hey, you know what?
Switch it up.
Upsets happen. That's what this is an upset. All right. Now, for you to find us on social media, we are on the Instagram, the Twitter, and the TikToks at Big 10 plus 4. You got to spell it the plus. Facebook, Big 10 plus 4. Type out the plus. Think about the plus. Don't even put the plus. It really doesn't matter. We'll probably pop up. We are part of the Odd Pods Media group of shows. We can be found at oddpodsmedia.com. We are the only sports show, so we're kind of a big deal there. But then we're also streamed on the ASAP network twice a week. If you've missed the stream, go to Spotify. You can find us there. One last note, at the end of this tournament, Dalton, we will no longer be Big 10 plus 4. We'll announce that probably Final Four weekend, or going into the Final Four weekend. The new name, that way we can start working it in and getting our handles changed and everything. But it's not a big secret. I just don't want to confuse people, so we're going to hold on to it until then.
So for now, this is where you find us. Everything's
correct. It will all change.
Oh man,
might be a little easier. I don't know. You don't have to worry about spelling out the plus or not. You can just put in our new name and hey, there they are. Perfect. It pops right up. That's right. But that's going to do it for us here for another edition of Big 10 plus 4, at least for now. But for Sam Sprunger, myself, Dalton Shetler, want to thank all of you for tuning in. So long. Happy March Madness. That's right. And I will see anybody that wants to stop by in Columbus.